Hello everyone, welcome to Nightmare Chronicles. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales. Now get comfortable and relax. For the best experience, grab your headset. I live in an old house, built in the late 1800s, surrounded by tall, whispering trees. It has been my home for as long as I can remember, a sanctuary of solitude after the passing of my wife, Margaret. We shared this space for nearly 5 decades, and after she died, the house seemed to grow even more quiet, sometimes too quiet. I liked it though. The silence gave me time to think, to reflect on the years gone by. I never believed in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural. Margaret used to say that our house had a presence, but I always laughed it off. The creaking of the floorboards, the groaning pipes. It was all part of the charm of an old place like this. But last night, something changed. It started with a low hum, almost like a distant wind. I dismissed it, thinking it was just another sound the house made as it settled into the night. But then came the knocks, 3 distinct knocks. At first, I thought someone was at the door, but who would visit an old man at this hour? Still, I got up and walked toward the front door. No one was there. I stood on the porch, scanning the darkness beyond the trees. A fog had settled in, giving everything an eerie, dreamlike glow. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled, but I forced myself to stay calm. Closing the door, I headed back to the living room, telling myself it was nothing. The rest of the evening was uneventful. I made myself a cup of tea and settled into my worn-out armchair. My old cat Toby sat on my lap, purring softly. I was almost dozing off when I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time louder. My heart skipped a beat. I got up, more irritated than scared, and checked the door again. Still, no one. But then, I noticed something chilling. The window near the front door was open. I was sure I had closed it earlier. A cold gust of air blew in, and I could feel my heart racing. Was someone in the house? I walked through each room, checking the windows and doors. But everything seemed normal. Yet, there was something off, a strange tension in the air. It was when I returned to the living room that I felt it, a presence, like someone was watching me. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, and Toby bolted off my lap, his fur standing on end. My eyes darted around the room, but I saw nothing, just shadows dancing in the corners. But the feeling didn't go away. I tried to shake it off. I'm just an old man in an old house, I told myself. I'm letting my imagination get the best of me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I decided to go to bed, hoping that sleep would take away the unease. As I climbed the stairs, I heard another sound, a faint whisper. I stopped, straining to listen. It was coming from the hallway behind me. "Leave," it whispered, so soft I almost thought I imagined it, but I didn't imagine it. I turned around slowly, expecting to see someone standing there, but again, nothing. My heart pounded in my chest. I locked myself in my bedroom, convinced I was losing my mind. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak and groan of the house making my pulse quicken. That's when I saw the shadows. At first, they were small, like the shadows of tree branches swaying outside, but they grew larger, darker, as if they were alive, moving along the walls of my room. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but the shadows formed into shapes, humanoid figures. My breath caught in my throat as they crept closer, reaching out as if to touch me. I threw the covers over my head, heart racing, sweat dripping down my face. The whispers returned, louder now, angry. "Leave," They hissed again and again. Morning came, but I didn't sleep. The shadows had vanished with the light of dawn, but I knew they were still there, waiting for night to fall again. I couldn't stay here. Whatever was in this house, it didn't want me here. I packed a bag, ready to leave for good. But before I could walk out the door, I heard the knocks. 3 times, louder than before. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I forced myself to open the door. There was no one there. But when I turned around, the house felt different, heavier. I felt it in my bones. Something evil had rooted itself here. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. The air turned ice cold, and there, standing at the end of the hallway, was a figure. It was tall, shadowy, and featureless, but I could feel its eyes on me, burning into my soul. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if something had wrapped itself around me, holding me in place. The figure moved closer, its whispers filling my ears until I thought my head would explode. "Leave," it hissed, but this time I knew it wouldn't let me go. The lights flickered, and the temperature dropped even further. Suddenly, the figure lunged at me. I screamed. Everything went black, and the last thing I remember was falling to the floor. When I woke up, it was daylight again, but I was lying in the middle of the living room, surrounded by broken glass and overturned furniture. I don't remember how I got there, but I knew one thing for certain. The house didn't want me anymore. I left that day, never to return. When I first moved into the small cottage on the outskirts of town, I thought it would be a fresh start. My wife had left me, and my life in the city was falling apart. The cottage was cheap, old, and isolated, just what I needed to clear my head. It was perched on the edge of a dense forest, the kind where the trees seemed to reach out and touch the sky. The first few days were peaceful. I'd wake up to the sound of birds, brew a cup of coffee, and just sit on the porch, enjoying the quiet. I could finally hear myself think again. The locals warned me about the forest, though. They said strange things happened out there, especially at night. "Stay inside when the sun goes down," one old man told me at the grocery store. I laughed it off, thinking it was just small-town superstition. After all, I'd lived in the city my whole life. There wasn't much that scared me. But then the nights came. It was on the 4th night that I first heard it. A faint knock, like someone tapping gently on glass. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, when the sound came from the window behind me. I froze. It was late, and no one ever came by. My nearest neighbor lived half a mile away. I turned slowly, expecting to see a bird or a branch brushing against the glass, but the window was clear. No one was there. I brushed it off as my imagination. Maybe I was just jumpy from all the solitude, but the tapping continued. Each night, around the same time, I'd hear that soft knock, always just once or twice, and always when I was alone. One night, I decided to check. I went outside, flashlight in hand, and scanned the area around the house. Nothing. No tracks, no signs of animals, nothing. It wasn't until the 6th night that I realized something was wrong. The tapping came again, but this time it wasn't soft. It was louder, more deliberate, and it wasn't just from the living room window. It was coming from every window in the house, as if someone was circling the cottage, tapping on each one. My heart pounded in my chest. I rushed from room to room, pulling back the curtains, but no one was there. Just the dark forest, silent and still. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak and groan of the house setting me on edge. When I did finally drift off, I was woken by something far worse. The sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, right outside my bedroom door. I didn't move. I could hear my own breath, shallow and quick. The footsteps stopped, and then I heard the doorknob rattle. My blood ran cold. Someone was in the house. But how? I had locked every door and window before going to bed. I reached for my phone, but my hand was shaking so badly, I dropped it on the floor. The noise seemed to trigger something because the doorknob rattled harder now, as if whoever, or whatever, was on the other side was trying to force its way in. I grabbed the lamp from my bedside table and crept toward the door. Just as I was about to fling it open, the rattling stopped. Complete silence. I flung the door open, lamp raised, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, the front door still locked, and all the windows secure. But I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel it, something watching me, lurking just beyond the light. The next day, I decided to get out of the house for a while. I took a walk in the woods, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. But even in the daylight, the forest felt wrong. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches twisting in unnatural ways, and the silence. It was deafening. No birds, no wind, nothing. As I walked deeper into the woods, I saw something that made my heart stop. A figure, standing just at the edge of the tree line, barely visible through the shadows. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its face was wrong. It was like a mask, featureless and smooth. But I could feel its eyes on me. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to the cottage, but I slammed the door behind me, heart racing. I couldn't stay here. I needed to leave. But when I turned to grab my keys, I saw it, standing outside the window, the same tall figure. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just watched. That night was the worst of my life. The tapping came again, louder, more frantic. The footsteps returned, circling my bed, but this time I could see the shadow of the figure through the crack under my door. It was inside the house now. I sat there, clutching the lamp, waiting for it to come, but it never did. The figure just stood there, watching, waiting, and then, as quickly as it had started, it stopped. The figure disappeared, the footsteps faded, and the house went silent again. I left the next morning. I didn't care about my things or the cottage anymore. I just needed to get away. As I drove down the dirt road, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, and there it was, standing at the edge of the forest, watching me leave. I never went back.